Welcome to the LongBox Paradox, episode 83. I am Dan, and I am, as always, joined by Jennifer at Comic Books Will Break Your Heart, or Comics Will Break Your Heart on YouTube. This is going to be a strange episode, so I'm just warning you from the top.
Buckle up, because I think our brand is we're normally strange, because we're strange people, but this is going to be a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. First, a little bit of good news I saw today. I'll do the sandwich. Descender and Ascender were picked up now for a TV series. The Sony licensing dropped, so a Canadian production company, those friendly Canadians will get it done. We're going to get Descender and Ascender as a TV series, which actually might work out better than a movie.
I think so too. I mean, I think that if you go through the first volume, that may be a little bit too quick to do an entire or that may be too small of content to do an entire series or an entire season for one book. But I think that overall, a couple seasons should definitely encompass at least Descender, and then Ascender only has the 2 volumes.
Yeah, so by the time they finish Ascender should have 3, maybe 4. Who knows? COVID's hit its second wave. Florida had a record high of 24 hours last night.
That blows my mind. As someone who just recently moved to the other coast and used to live in Florida, I saw a lot of friends who would go out to bars and drinking and karaoke and stuff like that. And I'm like, am I living in a parallel universe from you folks? Because where I'm at, literally tomorrow is our first day where it's okay, we can kind of open tomorrow, and other states have been open for months.
About a month here.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a part of me that I don't mind, because I do want to go certain places. I miss going to the comic book store and the bookstore, but it's not worth catching a deadly disease or, passing on a deadly disease.
Okay, so now onto the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, I have a difficult time with this. I 100% do. Because one of the people involved in this is a writer that has meant the world to me. And I know we discussed if we're going to name names, and fuck it, it's out there. So I guess it was 2 days ago, roughly, that the news broke. So 2 different stories about 2 different creators, both with affiliations to DC and Image and very many other companies. I'll go with the first one, Cameron Stewart. He is the artist on Fight Club, the Chuck Palahniuk Fight Club 2 or 3. Also was co-writer on Batgirl with Babstar and Brendan Fletcher, and on Gotham Academy with Becky Cloonan and Brendan Fletcher. He has been accused of grooming. Which, for those, it's not telling a girl how to dress herself and groom herself. But
it's not about personal hygiene.
Basically, to make them what their ideal, I wouldn't say date, or it's hard to describe.
I don't want to say victim, but it's when you use tactics that make a predator uses to make their, I don't want to say prey either, but where you basically, I don't know, Stockholm syndrome would be what I think that a lot of it is too.
Yeah. So Cameron Stewart basically used the internet and conventions as his personal playground. So there's things, a lot of when you travel around to promote a book, you're usually with your creative group a lot. So is there complicitness from people who are around him who just kept their mouths shut?
I think from what I've seen on Twitter is basically my only source of knowing what's going on from reading the tweets. But it sounds like a lot of people knew that Cameron Stewart basically engaged in this type of behavior, and it was a pattern where he would get close to someone younger, someone like either quirky, like trying to get into the comic book industry, young creators, specifically female, and start by, and what people who are sexual predators, when they groom someone, they make you feel special. They make you feel like what you have is just a secret and things like that. So he basically messaged younger girls and tried to act as like a mentor to them, but instead would kind of get near to the line where he would make sexually explicit comments, make it sexual. And even though they were the age of consent, he would be doing this with young women who were half his age.
One was 16 years old.
One was 16 years old when he was
32.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's, once again, I do think that there's a little bit of complicitness, because it seems like a lot of people knew, but not a lot of people were out in the open saying it. And I think that that is hard because...
as Becky Cloonan said, you're basically 2 steps away from someone else in the business. It's a very, very small circle.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Yeah.
Like, apparently this is rampant. I've heard people use the cons as their personal playgrounds. There are some that show up drunk. They just don't like being around people to start with, which if you don't like being around people, why would you go to a con except for try to make some money? Interesting enough, Cameron Stewart was one of the people who were so outspoken and so horrified when Raphael Albuquerque was hired by DC to do a Joker cover, and it was the one where he painted the Batgirl's lips, and he came out saying, you know, this is a book for young girls, blah, 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 while he was out basically preying on young girls, but so horrified by that cover and what it was going to do to their readers.
I think when I think about that, and not necessarily that I'm trying to give him an excuse or excusing it, but I think the mentality behind the behavior is specifically, well, they're worse than me, so I'm not as bad as they are. And even though he wasn't necessarily accused of rape or sexual misconduct, because I think that there is a line that is drawn, it sounds like he did stay on one side of that line. So I think that that's the excuse, is that, well, I didn't go over that line, so I didn't do anything illegal. And I think that is a lot of the making excuses for him. Yeah, 100%.
Would you like to come in and have some iced tea?
Exactly. Like, you know, so I think that it could have been that way. And think about Harvey Weinstein and what he had been doing for years. I'm sure that he didn't jump to rape the first time. He probably started by doing the same things that Cameron Stewart was doing over the last decade or so.
Okay, and on to the next one, which is the one that I'm all over the place on. Warren Ellis, of all fucking people. I believe the term was Bluebeard.
Mm-hmm. Which I had to look up that term, Bluebeard, and basically the same thing, like someone who goes for like young, quirky, like, you know, an older dude that...
Yeah, and I guess his thing was goth girls.
I mean, like, I get it. Like, I have a type too, but...
The weird thing is, though, he famously doesn't do conventions. Yeah. Because he said he'd rather be working. So, like, trying to figure out, like, I know he had his message board for a long-ass time where Kelly Sue and Matt Fraction met and actually ended up marrying.
But I think that, like, even, you know, doing my investigations by looking at tweets, it looks like there's one individual in particular that has emails where he makes sexually suggestive comments. And so, you know, this doesn't stop or start at conventions, even though there is a lot of rampant sexual abuse that happens, sexual misconduct. And I think it's not necessarily pervasive in just the comic book industry. I think it's a matter of feeling like you are owed something and entitlement.
There is a deafening silence about him, though. From other professionals.
So I think that there have been a lot more people that are like, yes, I specifically saw this with Cameron Stewart. It was kind of an open secret. A lot of people knew about it. We didn't really talk about it except in whispers. And then with Warren Ellis, it's like there's maybe 2 or 3 people that are saying like, yes, this happened to me. But a lot of people are like, I think even Gail Simone came out and said, you know, I appreciate the man and I love the man. You need to come out and you need to say something, dude. So,
which is weird because I think he's one of those guys that's just he only does Twitter to promote. So he might have gotten an email about it and be like, oh, okay.
You know, I get that. I understand as someone who goes on Twitter maybe like once or twice a week and just retweets shit.
Yeah.
I get that. But at the same time, if this was me, my ass would be on Twitter as soon as I heard about it.
Oh, I would be too.
So, I'm not only disappointed because I do and I really enjoy Warren Ellis's work, but I'm also disappointed that he hasn't said anything. I don't know if he did say anything that I would be undisappointed by any means. So
if his newsletter comes out Sunday and there's nothing in it about it, then that's a problem. Yeah. But I felt like if we're going to hear anything about it, his newsletter comes out on Sundays will be where we hear it.
Orbital Operations is his newsletter. For anyone who doesn't already subscribe to it, I'm not saying go ahead and subscribe to it just because of this, but you know, I'm sure on Sunday we'll hear about something.
And then, you know, there's people who were close to him, like Kelly Sue, Matt Fraction, where Kelly Sue was just like, I'm listening. I haven't. But usually she's so aggressive any other time that
she is. And I love that about her. I really do. So the fact that she's stayed quiet on both, I think is interesting. And I really do think that she's taking some time to listen and to take all the evidence. Kelly Sue, if you're watching it, please let us know what you think.
Okay.
Stories like these come out about some of our favorite. How do you separate I think that's a conversation that, like, I don't even know where to begin because there's some.
I 100% had this with Frank Miller when he put out Holy Terror, and I was like, holy shit, this is the most racist fucking book I've ever seen come out. And I had to have that, I guess, talk with myself of, okay, Frank has gone insane. I love these older books, but I know in my heart he's got hate. Somewhere in there is a very hateful, angry person. And you kind of have to go, I like this book, I have a problem with the person. And I know not everybody can do that. Like, Rat Queens is a gigantic fucking issue for me. And that is one that both creators ended up being a huge fucking problem.
Yeah, for sure.
So I couldn't even say I still can support this person. On some of those other Frank Miller books, there's Mazzucchelli, there's Klaus Janson. There's other people on them. There's other people involved. Warren Ellis, like, if it all ends up being true, I'm always going to have Planetary, I'm always going to have Transmetropolitan, but I might be reading more into those books when I read them and looking for some hidden, because other people had posted, like, Transmetropolitan, there was stuff they saw in it, they were like, oh, this was, you know, a sign that he was this way, and I never saw it, but I never was really looking for it.
I feel like I kind of had this moment, for anyone who's in, like, the comic book music thing, one of my favorite authors, Neil Gaiman, who is in a relationship with Amanda Palmer, and they recently had a falling out, and I think that's really very, very public falling out, but in all honesty, like, we have no clue. I have no clue what happened. And I even had a conversation with my partner, and I'm like, I don't know what happened, and because I don't know, I'm speculating. Like, what did happen? Did he cheat on her? Like, what happened between Neil Gaiman and Amanda Palmer? And then everyone, I think, as the internet, we treated it like divorced parents. Like, we're picking our side between Neil Gaiman and Amanda Palmer. And I told Josh, I'm like, you know, I really love Neil Gaiman. He's one of my favorite authors. Amanda Palmer and Dresden Dolls, I really enjoyed their work when I was growing up. But if I found out that like Neil Gaiman was accused of sexual misconduct or anything like that, and this is the fallout of it, I'm like, I just want to rip off my like death tattoo right now. So like that's hard, separating the creators from the creation. And I think that you can't. Like, I think when we talk about like politics in comics, or we talk about politics in general in the entertainment that we consume, they're always going to be together. So
there's no politics.
Sorry, forgot. I always forget there's no politics in comics. But with Rat Queens, initially what happened is, I think it was
Rock Up Church.
The artist was accused of domestic violence, and he not just like accused, like it was documented there, I believe arrests were involved. So it wasn't necessarily that it was just like a woman on Twitter getting angry or whatever, like, and not saying that that's what's happening with everything with Cameron Stewart Warren Ellis, but basically he was involved in domestic violence, and he was taken off of Rat Queens and then replaced by another artist.
It was Stepan Sejic, I think, and then it went to Tess Fowler, and then that was a whole other fucking ordeal.
So it's tough because like Rat Queens, like when it came out, like it's one of my absolute favorites, and even after it happened, I still kept it on my pull list for a really long time. And then, but I have a hard time reading it and loving it. And the same thing has happened to me with Brian Wood. He was accused of sexual misconduct. He was accused of sexual misconduct a few years back. And since then, I haven't really bought anything that he's been associated with.
Yeah, I really like The Massive, and that sucked. Yeah. And then he was doing like every Alien book for a while. I'm like, So that is where we're at with what's going on with people being horrible in comic books, which feels like it's a weekly fucking event.
You know, it really does. And I was like, man, I'm excited to have like a normal episode again. Like, we finally get comics back, and you know, we're talking some tough issues, but it feels good talking about these tough issues. And this doesn't feel like a tough issue that we're talking about, and it feels good. It hurts and it's strange, but I think that's part of the growing process. So we're still here.
So we're going to move on to our reviews. I didn't go to the store, so I got all mine on digital, so I have no cool covers to show. So I'm going to start out with a book that I didn't want to buy, but I felt strangely morbidly curious to check out, and that was Dark Knight's Death Metal. And Capullo's art I always enjoy. He had a very interesting take on Wonder Woman, and I actually really like this version of Wonder Woman, the armor. She has the chainsaw of truth. There is a slightly burned up Swamp Thing that's with her. There is a scene in here where we see the Batman who laughs. He goes, "I know you're sick of me." So it's very meta. I actually kind of enjoyed it, but weirdly, Dark Knight's Metal, I liked the first issue too, and as it went on, I started disliking it more and more. I'd probably give this like a 6. Again, I really like this version of Wonder Woman in it. It was a nice different take on her, and basically she's like the warden of the underworld where they're jailing everybody, and the Batmen have taken over basically Earth. There is a Tyrannosaurus Rex Batman that I guess Batman loaded his consciousness into the android, the robotic T-Rex, and they start making jokes of, hey, can you throw a Batarang with those little T-Rex arms? It was okay. Again, like, wasn't the great, but it was like comfort food where you're just like, okay, this is something I know.
Meat and potatoes.
Yes, very much. And again, Capullo's art, I enjoy it. He, especially, I forget who the inker or the colorist was. It was Jonathan Glapion on inks and FCO on color, and it just works perfectly with Capullo's art. Snyder, still not really. I feel like he's never really hit his like stride again since that Batman Court of Owls and Endgame run. But again, it's something comfortable to me that I can just kind of read and be like, okay, the world is kind of normal again.
I feel like there was a lot of hype over that one.
There's always hype.
And I went back and forth. I'm like, do I want to, like, yes or no? And then it came out, and I had seen the cover, and I'm like, okay, the cover's pretty cool.
The art term cover of Wonder Woman is fucking tits, like awesome, like
tits.
Yes.
But
with
I
two
was
S's.
like, tits with two T's. Get it? Because it's okay. But I feel like I have had that disappointment in a lot of the DC things that have come out recently, and I didn't pick up Death Metal. Maybe I should. Maybe the next time I go to the comic book store, if there's still one left, which there may not be,
there will
or maybe
be.
I'll buy it. Oh, okay. But I did hear a lot of really good things about it in internet land. So I'm like, oh man, maybe I missed out. Maybe I should get it. So we'll see. Maybe next week I'll give my opinion if I get it.
Like I said, it might read better as a trade.
Yeah. Coming up on, if you're ready for my next pick.
Go ahead.
Okay. So for my one of my picks of the week, DC. So I did go ahead and get Wonder Woman Dead Earth, which I've been really enjoying. It's this like weird post-apocalyptic type thing, and it's so different and it's so refreshing just to read a story like this, even though maybe that could be what Death Metal is. However, I enjoy this. I really love the artwork and the art and the coloring style. It's just that very like European. I don't want to give like a spoiler, but like this happens, and I don't know. I really enjoy this. There's a little bit of, I don't want to say like social commentary because I read it as such. I don't know if that was intentional. However, this is really good. I really enjoy Wonder Woman Dead Earth. It's done by Daniel Warren Johnson with Mike Spicer.
I haven't read it yet. I've got it on digital, but I haven't read it yet.
For me, the only thing, not necessarily that it's tough because I do like it, but the format is a little bit bigger, so it's going to be more of that like magazine size. So I think that if you are a person who collects single issues, then this may be kind of tough because, like for me, I've got my modern age bags and boards, but I don't have a ton of like magazine ones. So I think that this will definitely, if you haven't already picked up the single issues, go ahead, and this is going to be a really fun read to get in trade. So please pick this up at least in trade because it's really good.
I had the magazine size bags and boards when I was collecting the Batman Wang ones to sell.
Yeah.
Because I picked up a lot of them, especially when they jumped to about $80 selling in the raw.
For sure.
My next pick is Family Tree number 6 by Jeff Lemire and Phil Hester.
I really enjoyed that one as well.
It was a nice time jump.
Yeah. And I actually had just finished reading like the full trade again because I started picking up the single issues but never finished them. And then I just finished reading the trade and just jumped right into this, and it was really good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It fills in the grandfather, but the husband's father, and what happened with the son, and you start meeting the Shadow Society that's trying to kill the trees, and finding out why. And the most interesting thing that happened in it was him saying, "Well, every time you kill one of them, more sprout up, and maybe it's nature wanting to take over."
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really enjoyed this issue. It did something very un-Lemire-like that it filled in gaps. So I appreciate that, giving us a little backstory. Um, Unlike Gideon Falls, which I bought the latest issue.
Oh.
I know. I'm my own problem.
Even I like that book, and I'm still like I'm trade waiting for that one, and I actually really like the story.
So maybe those
Yeah.
magazine-sized boxes are fucking expensive. Like they're
Yeah.
more expensive than the other boxes, and it's infuriating. Although the CGC slab ones, they will fit in there.
Yeah.
I learned that.
For a lot of those like let me think of there's the Question.
Yep.
Like that's that size, and then
Superman Year One, Batman Damned.
Yep. And then the Harleen.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of what I mean. Like you could obviously put a lot, like you said, if you have any slabs, you can go ahead and put them in there. But
so Family Tree number 6, I'm actually giving an 8 out of 10 too. I really enjoyed it. Again, it was very un-Lemire-like, where I was like, oh, they're giving us backstory. This is, wow, Jeff Lemire finally has listened to some feedback. I'd like to think that was from me. Your next
Jeff
one.
Lemire. Thanks, Jeff Lemire, for watching and taking our feedback. My next one is going to be Tartarus number 3. This it's a really like wacky, weird book. I don't even like really know how to describe it because it's just really like kind of wacky and zany. But this one, it's issue number 3 in the series, and I just get so lost in this artwork. It's like this weird like fantasy sci-fi story, but the cast is so diverse and so beautiful. It reminds me, specifically this issue, reminded me a little bit of the Inkle, because of like there's one moment where they do the free fall thing, if you know what I'm talking about. I know you know what I'm talking about, Dan.
I know that you know that I know.
Yeah. So there's this one where like they're doing this free fall. Not as far down, but yeah, it just really reminds me of the Inkle, but if the Inkle was more diverse. So
didn't they do the free fall in Valerian too?
I would not be surprised at all. That movie, I actually went to the theater when I saw Valerian, and I fell asleep during the movie.
I don't blame you.
And it was maybe it's because I was tired. I think I went and saw it after work one day, and man, I expected so much more. And maybe it's because I'm like, oh, this is going to be as good as Fifth Element, and it was not at all.
No, but you see the director of Fifth Element, and you're like, okay, and they're doing a Jodorowsky like interpretation, and you walk in, you're like, okay, we have Cara Delevingne who can't act, we have Dane DeHaan who is basically Bobo Leonardo DiCaprio but without the talent.
Yeah.
Oh, did I say that out loud?
No, seriously, just no emotional depth. And I could even understand if that's the characters that were supposed to be played, because not necessarily that I want to even compare Twilight, but like when I think about like Kristen Stewart and
wooden acting.
Yeah. So I know that maybe that was the interpretation of how that character was, but it's still just I don't get it. So anyways, I did not like Valerian, and yeah. So the Tartarus,
yeah.
I always forget to give my like, I would rate it this out of this. So I forgot to do that with Wonder Woman Dead Earth. And I would probably say on a scale of like 1 to 10, I'm going to go ahead and give it like a solid like 8. because I really enjoy it. And I'm going to go the same with Tartarus. Maybe
I'm
it's
behind on Tartarus. Like I had the first issue and then it's still in my pile to read.
Yeah. It's a lot, like not necessarily that it's an info dump, but I think that it's introducing us to these whole new worlds. So, if you try Tartarus, like I highly recommend it. If you haven't already picked up the single issues, then pick up the trade at least because it's really good. So same, I would give Tartarus 8 out of 10. It's Johnny Christmas and Jack T. Cole, published by Image Comics. So highly recommend it.
I feel like my last pick you're going to have in your pile as well.
I think I know what you're talking about, but it's not in my... Well, okay, just go ahead and say it.
Strange Adventures #2.
It was one of my pickups this week, but it's not in my top 3. But
okay. Weirdly, I was kind of a little taken aback by this issue because there was very little Adam Strange in it and Alana and a lot of fucking Mr. Terrific.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Mr. Terrific. I'm a JSA fan, so like I'm good with it. But I literally was sitting down going, okay, we're gonna find out what happened, and I found out nothing. Mr. Terrific just kind of did trivia a lot.
I enjoyed that part, but
yeah, but it was like all night. Like he was waking up in the middle of the night with the T-Sphere telling him trivia, and he was answering it, and then like randomly playing chess. It was an interesting issue just because it caught me off guard. Because I was waiting for this giant like Alana issue with Adam Strange, and I was like, oh, this is not that at all, and you still really don't uncover what happened.
I feel like this is Tom King's one of his like signature styles, and I think I said this about issue #1, is that because if you look back to Mr. Miracle, and you see like one of the things that I liked about Mr. Miracle is that you see these just moments where him and Big Barda are just like fighting, and they're just shooting the shit, and if we do this to this the living room, we can do this, and so they're fighting, and then they're having these like personal moments, and I feel like I saw that same like temperature in here when Mr. Terrific is just like going about his day, answering trivia, and so there's these like really cool slice of life things that are happening with these characters, but I was still kind of unimpressed.
Yeah, like it was decent. It wasn't great. Like again, it caught me off guard. Like I'd still say I'd probably give it a 6 or 7 out of 10. Like it was enjoyable, but I literally was like, okay, this is going to be this deep issue of them investigating what went on. I didn't really get that, so it almost felt like a filler issue.
I wouldn't mind on the next issue, #3, or maybe even I'm still going to pick this up because I still enjoy it. But I wouldn't mind on issue 3 or issue 4 if Tom King is just like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and steal from my boy Jonathan Hickman and just do a Hickman info dump, and like just give us a layout of the entire like what the hell is going on. Like just give us a Hickman dump. Can I trademark that? The Hickman dump.
This is the kind of book that you could do it with, because really no one knows shit about Ran. And again, it was decent. Like of course, like Mitch Gerrard's and Doc Shaner's art was pretty much on point. But there's just weirdly, it felt hollow.
Yeah.
And when your signature usually is these huge emotional moments, and there really aren't any.
I think we'll get it in the next. I think that like Tom King and like whatever editors he's using, I think that they are smart enough to know that we're gonna need like a huge issue #3. Obviously, what was written months and months and months ago, before there was a COVID shutdown and pause in the comic book stores. So if we had read this issue a couple months ago, it probably would have been acceptable. But since we didn't read this one, we read it 3 months ago, basically.
Yeah.
I think that was why that was written. But I think we'll get a really good issue number 3. That I have a feeling in my heart.
And I know Cinia, when she watches this, is going to laugh her ass off that not only did I get a Tom King signed book, I'm talking about Tom King book. Because, like, I got a lot of comments of, haha, you got a Tom King signed book in your box.
Yeah. So they probably did that. They're like, you're gonna suffer, but you're gonna be happy about it.
Also, now we're on the subject of something real quick. DC canceled a shitload of books.
I know they canceled
it.
They canceled a lot of books, and I don't know which ones are gonna go to digital still and just come out and collected, but I don't know if they're just like cleaning house right now.
I would. There's a lot of dead cargo on the DC releases. Like, there's some books that shouldn't be out there.
I think from, like, obviously from a financial standpoint, and I know we talked about it last week with all the shit that DC is pulling, I think that me in particular, I have like 2-3 DC things on my pull list. I don't know if I'll add anything, if it'll get bigger than that. And that's normal for me because I'm not too huge into the big 2, but I think because of all of this stuff with them like separating from Diamond and doing their own distributors and comic book shops basically saying we're not ordering extra, I think they are going to financially feel the hurt because of that, and this may be a part of that.
What's your last pick?
Okay, so my last pick for like the new picks of the week, I still have one other one that I want to talk about. But Wind number 1 was kind of fun.
That was my 4th if I had to use.
I didn't really even know what to expect with this one, and to be completely honest, so for anyone who like didn't know, Wind is kind of like this. I don't even know what to relate it to, but this like medieval fantasy type book, and it's actually really fun. I feel.
Movie. It literally feels like a Disney movie.
It really does.
Or DreamWorks, one of those. But like,
yeah. Like what was that movie that just recently came out and it was like D&D?
Onward.
Yeah. So it feels kind of. You're right. It does kind of feel like that. I was really surprised because James Tynion IV does Something Is Killing the Children. So I don't know if I was just expecting like a diet version of that. But this was actually really fun. Maybe it's because I've been reading a lot of just like serious stuff and like heavier material lately. This one felt really fun, and it was a good like palate cleanser. And I feel like there's a world they're introducing in Wind, and I think it's going to be really fun. So
it's rather dark as well. Like hidden in the kind of childish art is some darkness.
Yeah. So for that one, once again, I'm rating it an 8 out of 10. But if I can go ahead and just talk about one other book that I bought, and I'm really excited. I just got it in yesterday, so I haven't even had a chance to read it yet. But it's Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer.
We're on Mindshift. You talked about that.
What's that?
We're on with Mindshift. You talked about that book.
Yeah. So it's looks so good. I got a chance to basically just like browse through it. But in case you didn't know it, Harriet Tubman fights some fucking racist demons and shit. So I did want to like just shout this book out. Tomorrow, in case you didn't know, is actually Juneteenth, which is a holiday when the South lost the Civil War. So for anyone who still flies the Confederate flag, you lost. So just so you know. But you know, if we think that like that was supposed to free the slaves, not all slaves became free. So Juneteenth is kind of like this holiday in Texas when that started in Texas when the last of the slaves were free. I mean, we can go into like the 13th Amendment and all that shit, which I will gladly talk to you if you want to like tweet at me or something. I don't know. But anyways, tomorrow is Juneteenth, and issue number 4 is coming out for this. There's already 3 issues. You can go ahead and you can get it on Amazon. You can buy it digitally on Comixology. I actually got this from David Crownson. I ordered it from him to get the physical copies, and I'm so glad that I did. So David Crownson is the writer. Cortland Ellis is the artist on here. So please pick it up. It looks really good. I got issue number 2. I got issue number 3 and 4 as well. So hopefully I'll be doing a review on my YouTube channel for it. So watch out. Watch out.
While we're at it, just before we started, I went out to my mailbox and I also had to pick up the 40th anniversary limited edition of Friday the 13th. It actually comes with the digital. It's a nice steel book. It's actually a rather heavy case. Comes with a bunch of new features, commentary by Sean Cunningham, the cast and crew, the Friday the 13th reunion, new tales from Friday the 13th, the man behind the legacy, Sean Cunningham, Lost Tales from Camp Blood, Part 1, the Friday the 13th Chronicles, and a bunch of extra footage not seen before.
Ooh, so it's like the Snyder Cut, right?
They're coming out with a new box set eventually, which, given all the legal issues going on with that series, will be nice to see, because the last box set they came out with is $600 on secondary market because it dried up so damn quick. It had a nice little tin case and came with like a Camp Crystal Lake badge. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I weirdly like it. And we have discussed, since it's Pride Month, we're going to be doing queer lens movies for horror, because horror was the secondary thing for my channel. Since we did Scream Queen, we've agreed to watch Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Jen hasn't seen it a lot longer than I have, and now looking through the lens of, okay, like, I know what this movie is, and now the subtext is going to be like in 3D.
It's so funny because like we watched Scream Queens, which is the documentary on Shudder about I wouldn't say it's just about
it's about Mark Patton.
It's literally more about Mark Patton more so than like the movie itself. But so I went back and I watched the movie and Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and I really feel like there is a lot of like subtext in it. I would say it's not necessarily like too in your face. I mean,
the Leather Daddy bar was the one where I'm like, and then the gym part with the coach.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Now there's like another part in the documentary where they talk about how in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, he's like dancing around his room. And to me, like, that's not necessarily a like queer thing. Like, I don't think that they were like writing in the script, like, oh, dance gay. But I do think that they specifically like wrote that scene to be like, okay, dance embarrassingly because this girl that you have a crush on is going to walk in. So for me, it was like just dance embarrassingly. It wasn't necessarily dance embarrassingly because we want to embarrass you as a queer person. So I
save some for the episode.
Yeah. Sorry, I went on a rant. So I did enjoy it. I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings about it, and you can get more of those thoughts and feelings when we talk about it.
I reached out to a horror YouTuber to join us, who is my mentor.
Yeah.
So I'm going to see if he'll come on with us for it, because I want to get his take on it. But I haven't watched it recently. I'm going to watch it before we do the episode. But I just remember Mark Patton overacting the shit out of a couple of scenes where I was like, he should have done soap operas.
Yeah. Funny enough, I ended up like waking up like 2 mornings ago. I woke up at like 3 a.m. and couldn't sleep. And I'm like, oh, what do I want to watch? Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Let's do it. So.
Josh, wake up. Watch this.
Yeah. Well, no. So here's the thing, is that like he doesn't really care for horror movies. So I'm like, okay, I'll go ahead and like sneak in the horror movie because he's sleeping.
So we're also going to pick from Shudder's selection of LGBTQIA, whatever. I don't know what the IA means.
Intersex and asexual. And there's
Okay.
usually a plus at the end because it's like an umbrella term.
Okay, but so we're gonna go from their selection they have and pick a movie, and we're gonna watch it and talk about it. I feel like Clive Barker's got to have a movie on there.
He does. So it's obviously I think Hellraiser's on there, and I think it's just because Clive Barker's queer.
Yes.
So I think that was the only reason why that was there. But now, like going back and watching it, I think I'll watch it with a different perspective.
Also, Monday we have the Ink Panels Graphic Novel Book Club with Gambit, and slated to appear with us is the Comic Queen again, but we never know with her. She sometimes shows up, sometimes doesn't, but tentatively she's there. We're doing We Can Never Go Home by Josh Hood and Matthew Rosenberg from Black Mask Studios, first Black Mask book we've done, and Gambit will have to give his pick for July. And
I was just thinking that. I was like, who gets the next pick? So I'm excited to not only like read it and talk about it, but to also find out what the next pick is.
And it's the 1-year anniversary episode of that show, so should be interesting. I'll be drinking, so something stupid will probably come out of my mouth at some point. It's a given.
And I'll be sober, so same.
Well, you'll be on painkillers.
Yeah. Well, not much anymore. My foot's actually not doing too bad. The last Wednesday, I ended up walking like 7 miles, and so that sucked. And I was like, okay, I can't do more than like a mile right now. You
didn't listen to the Reclaimers? I would walk 500 miles.
No, not that much, because that would take way too long.
Okay, so we're going to start what some people came here for, our top 5 LGBTQIA plus characters in comics. We're going to do our honorable mentions after the fact because we've learned that that's what we need to do.
I think that's a good form. I mean, like, not necessarily that I want to like ruin any thunder, but I feel like some of the ones that end up on my honorable mentions or your honorable mentions end up like on each other's list. So I don't want to necessarily steal thunder. But, you know, I've got like my honorable mentions list and it's huge. So I had to kill a lot of darlings for this one. So
I'll let you go first.
Okay. So my first one, Alters, which is about a young woman who is transgender and comes into superpowers. I
might have done this wrong. I picked characters.
Oh, well, I mean, like,
okay.
Chalice is the character in this one. So I really enjoyed this one. This one came out a couple years ago. Let me see if I can find like a good, the artwork is, I wouldn't necessarily say that this one is like for younger, but I do think that the artwork is not too like R-rated or anything. Definitely deals with obviously social issues. It's put out by Aftershock, if you can see that there. Paul Jenkins, Layla Lays, Tamara Bonvillain, and Ryan Hill. So I highly recommend it.
Wow, Paul Jenkins, that's not a name I would associate with a book like that.
Yeah. So I think it's really good. It is a little bit, I don't want to say like whitewashed. You're going to get a little bit of diversity in here, but yeah, it is still a really good book. Check it out. Alters.
Like normal, I am not that prepared.
No, that's okay. This was a really tough list, like even for not necessarily to like put stuff on the list, but there's so many characters that I just really enjoy.
Okay, so for me, my number 5 is Adis from Heathen from Vault Comics. She is an interesting character. And and how like the people and the gods, because of her sexuality, kind of go after her. And she's such a strong character that like even the Valkyrie Brunhild respects her and loves her. I just gravitated to this character, so she is my number 5. Definitely, it's actually a great book to check out. The art is interesting, a little monochromatic at points, but totally check it out. It's a likable character. There's everything to love about her. Even her helmet's awesome. If I could have one, I would wear it. But that was my number 5. I could say a ton more about the book, but I kind of think at some point it might be one of our books to do for book club. So I'm kind of.
It is actually on my list, but a little bit further down my list. So maybe I'll go in a little bit more into Heathen a little bit later. But yes, it is a fantastic book.
Yes. Your number 4.
My number 4 is going to be, this one was actually not necessarily a weird pick, but I think it's underrated. Kaptara by Chip Zdarsky.
I forgot about that book.
Yeah, and not necessarily that like the main character Keith is my favorite, but it's a really great story, and I want to go ahead. This is one of those like weird, wacky sci-fi picks, and which is totally my brand. And Naked Space Wizard is in it. So this is one of those stories where there is a little bit of that, like queer tragedy. There's a breakup, and so what better way to get away from an ex than just yeeting yourself off the planet and into another dimension. I really, really enjoyed this one. It's weird. I don't think that it's coming back ever again, which kind of breaks my heart. But I really loved this book. It's weird, wacky science fiction. If you like any of those, if you like any of our recommendations and you just want something really weird, there's even like this little thought bubble that like goes around and like gives you little pieces of wisdom, and it's adorable. So Kaptara by Chip Zdarsky, and the artist is Kagan McLeod.
Okay, and for my number 4, character created by Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey, and that would be Miss America Chavez
Yep.
from Young Avengers, the second incarnation. Very strong Latina from another dimension. Just her whole look, I think, also leads to liking the character because she's be like, the easiest cosplay.
Yeah.
You just need a jean jacket with a star on it, and
it's that like found cosplay. Like you can find all if you're like me and just have like tons of shit. Like you can find all this stuff in your closet.
Yeah, San Diego Comic-Con, there was a ton of Latinas in San Diego area dressed up, and again, it's cool because anybody could do that costume, and I'm not picking it just because of the cosplay. She's just a fascinating character. She did get her own series that I felt was mismanaged a little bit. I didn't think the writing was kind of on point on it, but on the Young Avengers series, she was awesome.
Yeah.
And an awesome younger lesbian person of color.
I think is she bisexual? I thought she was bisexual.
I thought she leaned more towards lesbian, but I could be. They might have changed it.
Sexuality is a spectrum, so.
Because I know Kate Bishop, I think, was the one who was more bi in the group, but it's been a while since I read it. But like anytime I see America Chavez on the cover, I'm like, I have to buy that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that way. But a great character. If you haven't read that Young Avengers run, check it out. It is very interesting, and they kind of all sleep with each other at one point or another, if I recall. Had a little bit of Melrose Place to it. I know, I'm digging deep there.
I was going to say that is not only an obscure reference, but it kind of ages you.
Listen, like after the CD-ROM thing, like nothing is gonna bother me again. Like, tell your jokes. I don't care. Your number 4 or 3 or
my
3.
number 3 is going to be, we already talked about it, but Heathen. Natasha Altarisi just does a fantastic job with this character. You were mentioning the helmet. One thing that I do enjoy about this story is that because it is a young queer woman, she is cast away from her group because of sins that she committed. And even though I don't think that you would see that like in a traditional like Viking village, however, there's a lot of queerness in this, not just the main character Adis, but you do see a lot of, you see a ton of queer characters, and that's just cool to see instead of it just being like one token character. So she's a badass in this, so check it out. Okay.
So, for my next one, I have to preface it because that's where we're at right now with this shit. I can't list them separately. I have to list these two as a pair.
Okay.
You can't have one without the other, in my opinion. And it's going to lead to weirdness because we talked about the writer not too long ago. So, Apollo and Midnighter from The Authority.
Yeah, yep.
Warren Ellis created them, and so this is at the time where gay characters were not prevalent at all. And Midnighter was like the baddest badass of them all, and to find out him and Apollo were lovers was fascinating. And again, nobody was really doing books like this at the time. So at the time that it came out, it was very like, oh my God, wow. And then, you know, they had their wedding, which I think was the first gay wedding in comics, possibly.
There may have been another one, but...
And Midnighter wore white leather.
Because you know, of course.
I always felt, because it was always Apollo of the light, Midnighter of the dark, so you had that like attraction. They were experimented on, so they've always been together. And there was something weirdly sweet about this like grim, gritty guy who would melt every time he was around his sun god.
Mm-hmm.
It was two great characters to start with, but just you add in that other fact of their relationship. And for like a hetero guy like me reading comics at the time, you're like, oh, this is awesome. Like, it kind of like, I'm trying to think of the wording on this. Like,
I think it's funny that like I hear a lot of
a conversation starter.
Yeah, I think it's funny because a lot of the like straight guys that I know who talk about Midnighter, it's like they relate to Midnighter, and it's like, does it take someone like, you know, just punching someone and, you know, that's what it takes for you to relate to someone? But Midnighter is just a fun character. Like he's this badass, but he has this sensitive side that's like not necessarily private, but it's like, yeah, I'm gay, so what? And
yeah, literally, that's what it is. It's like, I'm gay, I can beat your ass, what?
Let's like on to the next punch. And not
necessarily. It's sad, like, at the time, the way they were portraying gay men in media, where it was always this, it's basically like the Queer Eye guys. That's how they were always portrayed as, instead of, yes, a gay man can be tough.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't a lot of that. And that is the media stereotype of what a gay man was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'm presenting myself well here, but I'm trying to like get my piecemeal thoughts together.
I think you're right that media does portray queer people in a certain way, and even if you take a look at I don't know, just the history of queer people in media, is that especially men are presented in an effeminate way, and not saying that that's a bad thing, But to see for people who are gay, queer, whatever, for someone to identify that way and to see someone who doesn't fit into this narrow like pigeonhole, it is kind of cool.
Your number 2.
My number 2 is going to be the Queen, Angela. I know I have like weird lights reflected into these, but Angela is just, I freaking love Angela so much. She is a badass. She's originally from Spawn. She was created by Neil Gaiman.
Gigantic lawsuit for years.
It's huge. And then Marvel got the rights to her, and then I feel like she's really been killing it in the Marvel, literally like killing it in the Marvel universe. There's just so much like history with this character, and I'm really hoping, my prediction, if I can go ahead and predict it now, is that she will show up eventually in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I really hope that she ends up appearing in the new Thor movie. I think that would be really awesome.
I thought about this because they said that Valkyrie is going to find her queen. So.
I don't know if that, I mean, who knows? But ultimately, like in the comic books, in this one in particular, Angela, Queen of Hell, we see some stuff between Jane Foster, Thor, and Angela. So I'm really hoping in the upcoming movie, I don't know if she's going to be one of those at the end of the movie, I can't remember what you call that.
The post-credit.
Post-credits, the post-credit scene. If she's going to show up in a post-credit scene or what. I don't think that she'll be a big part of this upcoming movie, but I do think
you have a sister. What?
I mean, so in Thor 3 and Ragnarok, Hela was Thor's sister, but in reality, because I live in the Marvel comic universe, in this, so Angela is actually Thor's sister and Thor's older sister, so I don't know how they're going to play that off, but I think that Angela will show up. So anyways, I think this is really fun. She travels through hell to go get her lover, and it's really cool. I love Angela. I'm going to get a tattoo of Angela eventually, but so anyways, Angela's queer and it's amazing.
Okay, so
you're number 2. Or you're number 1. You're number 1.
No, it'd be my number 2.
You're number 2.
Yes. So I'm sure it's your number 1.
Probably.
But Kate Kane, Batwoman, is my number 2. And in particular, Greg Rucka and J.H. Williams' run on that book is phenomenal. Greg Rucka, for a straight man, knows how to write these characters.
Yeah.
Deftly. And Kate Kane has such a history when you start going into her time in boot camp, and she's a Marine, if I remember correctly, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Was that an elegy, or was it one of the other trades that had that whole backstory? I want to say it was elegy.
It should have been elegy, because I think, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if you know the history of what happened with J.H. Williams and Greg Rucka, they had planned for her to marry Maggie Sawyer, and DC first says, no way are we having that wedding. And then they turned around after they quit the book saying, no, we don't want any weddings. But yet then they go promote Batman Catwoman after that, a wedding.
Yeah, and especially because I think one thing specifically they said is that like a character needs to have tragedy, and it's like, have queer people not had enough fucking tragedy? Like, that's seriously the only time a queer person can show up is to be like, and for women too, is that like we're just tragic for tragic sake. So they actually left the series because they couldn't have her marry, which is sad, because when I think about insane like dynamic panels on a comic book page. Like I will always think about J.H. Williams III. I always think about his Batwoman run, and boy,
it derailed years of work that they put into that book.
Yep.
Like,
and for anyone who, like, you know, just to like thinking about politics in comics, you know, part of the backstory of Batwoman is that she had to leave the Marines because of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was a policy initiated in the Clinton administration. I believe, maybe it was Bush.
Yeah, I think it was Bush.
Yeah. So it was basically a policy where you are allowed to be gay in the military, but you can't talk about it. So don't ask, don't tell. But if you were found out, you were still basically like discharged from the army. And so this is what happens to Batwoman. You know, fast forward years, and just only recently, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was reversed. So it's kind of weird to see politics in comics that way.
Yeah. Again, like, fantastic series. Go back and get the stuff, because a lot of it was secondary stories and Detective Comics that eventually were collected. Yeah. And then her New 52 series, which was great. I did not like the Rebirth series. I'm not saying Marguerite Bennett and James Tynion did a bad job on it, but when you go from Greg Rucka to them, the whole vibe of the book changed.
I think the vibe of the book also went from what I recall, because it's been a couple years since I've read the Marguerite Bennett run, but it went from, I feel, very dark and gritty and mysterious with Greg Rucka, and then more of like tropical island, we're on a vacation solving crime. So yeah, and not necessarily that's a bad thing, but I feel like it's almost the same thing that happened with the recent Sabrina books, is that Chilling Adventures with Sabrina was dark and gritty and satanic and like witchy as all hell. And then the new Sabrina that recently came up was very like twee. And I get it. You're trying to get a specific type of reader, and I'm not the reader who loves it. I'll still buy it because I fucking love it, but still.
Also, if for some reason you didn't like the newer version of Batwoman, there's a book that kind of took the old Batwoman vibe to it, which was Jody Houser's Mother Panic, which I would check out if you like the Greg Rucka run. Different vibe, but some of the same kind of beats.
Yeah, there is, with Mother Panic, I really, really enjoyed it. There is like a pinch of like spoiled teenage brat in it. And so, but I think that even though I don't necessarily vibe with that type of character or identify, I mean like a little bit, because I'm a like spoiled adult brat, but I think that was a good character arc, and there were some really fun things happening with DC doing the Young Animals imprint, and they were doing the Milk Wars stuff, which had some fun stuff going on, which introduced Shade the Changing Girl.
Those Becky Cloonan covers. Oh.
Yeah. So if you want to check out Mother Panic, like, do that. Also, you know, check out Shade the Changing Girl was fantastic. So since Batwoman was my number one, what's your number one?
So my number one is Renee Montoya. She became the new Question. Again, Greg Rucka wrote her in her outing issues. There is a story in Gotham Central called Half a Life where it kind of gets weird. So Two-Face fell in love with Renee Montoya, and he's kind of stalking her around and sees her out with another woman. So he decides that he's going to out her and make her love him. Real fucking creepy story. So he sends pictures of her kissing this girl to her family, to the police, and a lot of it goes through her dealing with her family being outed, her getting harassed at work after being outed, and her life crumbling around her. But it's so heavy and deftly handled on how someone would have to deal with being outed in that way. And that was when people were being outed in the media quite a bit during the time when this was published. So it was somewhat topical, but Greg Rucka, once again, handles these stories so deftly well. And it's heartbreaking seeing what she's going through. And it starts a downward spiral in her life after that, where she's drinking heavily. Her
Relatable.
Her partner is killed. Well, her police partner is killed, and her trying to find out who killed him. The Spectre, aka Jim Corrigan, who's the Spectre's left, is a crooked cop, and he's starting shit with her. But Gotham Central, I mean, I recommend the whole series, but in particular that book Half a Life, and it shows when Harvey Dent falls in love with her, Two-Face, during the No Man's Land, and her having the talk with Harvey going, look, I'm never going to love you. I don't like men. And he's like, I'm going to make you love me. And she's like, it's never going to happen. And it's this conversation where it's just her and him. And she, at one point, was defending him before all this happened. And when she finds out it's him, she goes by herself to talk to him. I'm not doing the story justice. I'm not at all. Like, it's a lot to unpack. It really is. But it's such a fucking great book. And that particular book, it's the trade Half a Life. And if you want to read a great, like, story of just heartbreak of being outed, and her family disowns her. They are a very Latino family and prideful, and that stuff like that does not happen in their family. And the father, who owns a grocery store, is just like, I don't have a daughter. Like, it's heavy as fuck, but again, Greg Rucka writes it so fantastically. And Montoya is just such a character where you have her downfall and then her uprising through the 52 series, where she becomes the Question, and she builds herself back up again. The alcoholism is gone and everything else. And she became one of my favorite characters during that time. For someone who was just in Batman the Animated Series as a side character, and they gave the second life to, like Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
So please just read Gotham Central in general. It is fantastic. I think I've even told you to buy the trades on one of your Perkinen buys.
One of my big. I just did another like $70 book buy, so I've got a lot of stuff to go through in my pile.
Honorable mentions.
I've got a lot of like stuff. I don't know. Like, I've got a lot of honorable mentions here. I don't know about you, but
I got 4.
So I'll kind of go first. Okay. I have. Let me go ahead and narrow this down. I'll do 5. I might do 6. I'll go. Do you want to go like back and forth, or do you just want to like me to do all 6 of them?
We'll go back and forth.
Okay. So my first one, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these show up on your honorable mentions. This next one was one that I slept on for a very long time, because I'm like, oh, it's going to be 2 lesbians drawn by, I don't want to say this with a negative connotation, but I feel like I am, like a deviant art artist, but Sunstone. So initially, I didn't read this one for a very long time, because I'm like, it's just going to be some straight dudes, like scissoring fantasy, which
it's BDSM.
Yeah. So very dangerous scissoring.
Yes.
Scissoring with a safe word. So I really thought that it was going to be seriously like straight dude scissoring fantasy. But I read it and I fell in love. I think that it does stay true to what queer characters go through, and I think that it gives a lot of whether I don't really know even if Sejic. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if he's in the BDSM community, but I feel like he like got a lot of things right.
Did a lot of research.
So I don't know if he did a lot of research. I don't know if like, you know, he went to the same club in Nightmare on Elm Street 2 or what. However, I do think this is a very, like, it's heartwarming. It's adorable. It is so rated R, and please be prepared for that. But Sunstone is actually kind of cute.
The second volume has the part where the girl with the red hair, I can't remember her name, she is looking in the mirror and she's like, I do me, and she goes, oh my god, I just Buffalo Billed myself.
So
that's a reference. I was like, I agree.
Yeah. So it's really cute, and it I highly recommend it. It's a lot cuter than I thought it was going to be. So if you want some like queer BDSM, highly recommend Sunstone.
So my first honorable mention would be the character Destiny from the X-Men universe and her long relationship with Mystique. And the best version of Destiny was the one that was in House of X that was repeatedly, that killed Moira and was like, yep. I'm doing this very painful so you'll remember it.
So you remember it. That was one of the, like, I think one of the best moments is because, like, you're kind of learning about Moira's superpower, or yes. Sorry, her mutant ability. And so you're, like, learning about this, and so, yeah, that was a really fun moment. I really enjoyed House of X, Powers of X. So,
your next one.
So my next pick, and I think for my honorable mentions, most of these are going to be on my honorable mentions because it's not just characters, it's stories. But one of the next stories that I really enjoyed, The Wilds by Vita Ayala and Emily Pearson does the artwork. I really enjoyed this one. The two main characters are queer. Sorry, this has like there's one page where there's naughty stuff going on. I'm going to try to keep this PG-13 rated. Did I do that right? Maybe I didn't. I don't know. So it's fun. It's basically like if the zombie apocalypse happened, but everyone grew like flowers and shit out of their head. So the monsters, the zombies basically sprout flowers and grow fauna, not unlike Family Tree, but in a different way. But this was really fun to read. And I would say this isn't a queer story. It's a story with queer protagonists, and it was really, really good. So The Wilds, and it's published by Black Mask Studios, which has some really good stuff.
Okay. My next one is Scandal Savage from Secret Six by Gail Simone. Her romance with Knockout, who is one of the Escape from Apocalypse, was interesting, and also like having your father be an immortal caveman that's a supervillain is interesting. Just always loved the way Gail Simone wrote her and introduced her. Gail Simone did a lot of characters like that kind of resonate. That would be mine, and Secret Six is a fucking great book. Gail Simone with Dale Eaglesham, I believe, is the artist. But right. Check it out. Your next one.
Okay, so my next pick is Kim and Kim. I know your particular feelings. I know that you didn't love this one. However, this one's just like, I feel like I would have loved this as a teenager, even though I love it as an adult. Two women, kind of like bounty hunting across the universe, just getting into shit, some family trouble. It's also written by Magdalene Visaggio, and it's a really good book. Fun, queer, quirky characters that, like, I love their outfits, and they're just kicking ass through space. So highly recommend it.
My next character, it's another one from Gail Simone that was introduced in Batgirl during Gail Simone's run, and that was Alicia Yeoh, trans character, which there's not a whole lot right now in comics. She was a huge part of Gail Simone's run, and weirdly, after Gail Simone left, the character kind of just kept getting pushed further and further into the background. Like, weirdly enough, during Cameron Stewart and Brendan Fletcher and Babs Tarr's run, she barely appeared, and even less so now. But very interesting character, especially when she finally tells Barbara that she's trans and everything else, and Barbara's like, I don't care. Like, just literally, she was just like, okay, like, we both have our other lives. But it was an interesting character, and again, it's like, you don't see many trans characters in comics, at least, that aren't made to be like freaky comical characters that they're basically making fun of them more than
and villains in particular are using their like transness as a I don't want to say a metaphor for mental illness, but like specifically calling it a mental illness, which it is not at all. But yeah, and I think that happens a lot of times when queer characters are written by individuals who are not queer. I think that they get put there just as like either a token character, but sometimes it's done really well.
Your next one.
So my next one is actually, this one was recommended to me by Katie, the owner of Books with Pictures here in Portland. And I probably never picked this up because the theme is basically hockey, college, white dude, and like that is so like not my brand. So but this one is Check Please, and it's about what is his name? I can't even think of his name right now. Biddy is his like nickname, but he goes to college, plays hockey for this college team, and he has a vlog that he does, and he bakes pies. And I know nothing about hockey. I know nothing about baking, and I know nothing really about college either, but this was absolutely adorable and I loved it. It was originally a webcomic, and it did a Kickstarter, a very like popular Kickstarter, and it's written by I don't want to like mispronounce this, but Ngozi Ukazu. So this book shocked the hell out of me, but I loved it so much. It was adorable. Biddy is queer, and he basically is on this hockey team with a whole bunch of bros, and dealing with that, and dealing with all of them being like, oh, are you gonna go screw that girl, and all of that. And it really is adorable. Highly recommend. Check Please.
The art looks interesting.
What's that?
The art looks interesting. It's different.
The artwork reminds me of, let me see if I can find a good page. But it reminds me of Scott Pilgrim a little bit.
That's what I was looking at, the way the eyes were done. I was like, it's very Canadian.
Yeah. And I thought that it was based in Canada, but it's in the north. Technically, it's not like in Canada. That's what I kind of got too, but it's actually based in like the northern United States.
Minnesota?
So probably. But it was really cute and heartwarming, and it didn't feel tragic in the way that a lot of queer stories end up being. So this one was a really good story.
So my last pick, and I'm not sure how to classify him, if he'd be poly or just kind of try anything, but John Constantine.
Is he pansexual?
Maybe that would be it, because he kind of does everything.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he's in a poly relationship, but I would say he's pansexual at least.
That could be, because like he's not really attached, but he has many lovers. So
yeah.
It's hard to like put him in a box, I guess I should say, because I mean, good Lord, in that Justice League Dark video, he fucked a furry.
I am gonna go ahead and say that he, like, to be in a poly relationship, you're usually with multiple lovers at once. And John Constantine is always in a relationship with his cigarettes first. So, yeah, I would say that poly and pansexual.
Okay. So that we might like, there's many stories of him that are interesting, and he's just an interesting character. He's a bastard, like
Yeah.
100%. That's his brand. Like, he's never really there to help you. He's there to help himself. And sometimes he'll be helping himself to some ass.
Yeah.
All types. Furry, male, female.
Yep.
He'll do it all. Demons, angels.
Yeah.
You name it, he's got it.
And he's one of the few characters that we see who is bisexual, pansexual, that it's like explicitly talked about in the like movie or show adaptation, because a lot of, like, even for Deadpool, who is in canon pansexual, but we don't really see that in the movies yet.
And
it's kind of talked about, but
they don't really talk about it that much. They kind of hint at it, but not like put it all out there. Yeah. Although Rob Liefeld, I'm sure, has thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I have one last honorable mention, and the pick is Snapdragon. This is another one published by First Second. Check Please was also published by First Second. But Snapdragon is, I know I've talked about it briefly on the show before, but it's basically about this young girl who meets a witch in the woods, and her best friend, you actually see her best friend in the book transition. And this is obviously focused at a younger audience, but I think it's really important for young people to see that type of healthy thing where it's basically like, oh, I met you as a boy. Oh, and you, like, you know, you identify as a girl. Okay, cool. We're still best friends. And then I don't want to spoil anything, but there's just like good kind of healthy queer relationships in this. So I really enjoy it. And it is focused at a younger audience. And even though my brand is usually darker and grittier, this was very pleasant.
I don't want to freak you out, but next week's going to be a weird image week.
What? I felt like this week was a weird image week for me, but what's next week coming out?
So we have Ascender Volume 2 coming out.
Ascender, yeah, Volume 2, yep.
We have Die Number 11 with a Ben Oliver variant. We have Isola Volume 2 coming out. Middle West 17. Mercy number 3, which I feel like we just got number 2 like 2 weeks ago, with a Stepan Sejic cover and an Aldalfo cover. Monstrous number 28. Nomen Omen number 6, which I have not been digging that book at all. Sex Criminals number 29 with a Jen Bartel naughty cover. Which, yeah. We have Spawn, and then that new Sean Phillips book, The Texas Blood.
I think that everything that you just mentioned is something that I'm, like, there's a couple that I may not pick up. Like, I wait for the trade on Middle West, so I probably won't be picking up that single issue. But like everything else, I'm probably going to end up picking up.
Looking through this stuff real quick to see like what was catching my eye. I was like, oh yeah, of course. Like, Die hasn't come out in a long time, but I saw covers months and months ago.
Yep. It's weird how the quarantine did that. Like this quarantine, and yeah.
The Plunge number 4 comes out from Hill House.
I saw that.
Jenny Friesen variant for Lolo Woods.
Some of those runs are about to come to an end. Like, I think Plunge was 4 of 5, so
yeah,
or maybe 4 of 6. So I think we're going to see some of those Hill House ones come to an end.
And Once in Future number 8 from Boom comes out. Yep. Some of the standouts that I saw, but I was like, oh, Mercy number 3. This time with less being told. And I think that might be the last week that previews will have the list of what's coming out from DC. So
yeah, once again, I'm very curious what's going to happen. I feel like I've been saying that a lot recently with comic books, especially with the quarantine happening. I'm like, oh, I'm very curious what's going to happen, but we'll see.
Oh wow, we had comments, but I was on the banners thing the whole time. Player One Mate Miggy loves Domino Swift from Motor Crush. I bought #1 of Motor Crush, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the biggest Babs Tarr fan. I don't think her art does storytelling well.
See, I feel the opposite. Like, I liked her artwork more than I loved the story.
I hated both, to be honest.
I still enjoyed it.
It's a strong word. I disliked.
Yeah. I still thought it was okay, and it was fun for what it was. But I think it was hard for me to get the single issues, and I ended up just getting the first volume and never picked it back up after the first volume. So
I think that was it.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, for Batgirl or for Motor Crush? Because Motor Crush, I think, only had like 1 volume, and that was it.
Okay. I thought for some reason it had 2 or 3.
No, it just didn't last that long. I did read Adventure Man.
Oh, you did? What'd you think of Adventure Man?
It didn't tell you a whole lot of like what the fuck was going on, but it was like it just jumped you right into the middle of like, hey, we're taking these drugs. I was like, all right, like they don't know what it's gonna do to them, but all right. But the Dodsons art, I'm just like, I'm in.
I'm excited to see where it goes, and like Adventure Man #1 was like a huge info dump for a lot of things, and it was a lot of story. Like it was a thick book with 2 C's. So
very much. It is getting time for me to get ready to go to work, so it's time for us to wrap up. So yeah, play the music. So you can find me at comic_chop_news at Instagram and Twitter. I'm usually hiding, but you can find me at Chop Comic on Twitter. Jennifer is at Comic Books Will Break Your Heart on Instagram, and her YouTube channel is at Comics Will Break Your Heart. Subscribe, like, comment, share, and do that with us as well. There's a button somewhere.
And tomorrow is Juneteenth. It should be a bigger thing than it is. I highly recommend that you donate $19 to the Black Resilience Fund. It's a local organization here that helps Black people and people of color live a much better life. So Black Resilience Fund, you can donate $19 tomorrow, June 19th, for Juneteenth.
On Monday, the 22nd at 10 p.m., you can find us here with at Gambit Inc. And we will be doing We Can Never Go Home, possibly with the Comic Queen. I'm sure this is a book that people are going to have some opinions on.
I haven't even started it yet, so I'm excited to get my opinions formulated. I have tiny little Post-it notes to like Sydney the shit out of this book.
And speaking of Sydney, we peer pressured the shit out of her to do the Dune over with us. And the consensus is we're going to be doing chapter by chapter episodes, which should take us all the way to when the movie actually releases, because there's a lot of fucking chapters.
And apparently there's going to be a trailer release next month. Did I read that somewhere?
Tell me more.
That's all I know. That's all I know, that there may be a trailer release next month.
Can I get Freddy's razor knife
and just like yeah. So whenever that comes out, we're gonna have so many thoughts about that.
I need to get Sid on for that, because I know it's just gonna be her going, look at Oscar Isaac, that's such a beautiful man.
Mm-hmm.
That beard. I know, I totally know that's gonna be my life for 24 hours of her just overnight going, I know it's like 6 a.m. in Thailand, but did you just see this?
I know I'm gonna get like so many people either posting to my timeline or messaging me on Instagram or text messaging me, be like, did you see the Dune trailer? Like, of course, I don't know if I told you, but someone at work was like, I was talking about Dune, and he's like, oh, like, have you read the books? And I'm like, my dude, yeah, I've read the books.
The asshole at work I no longer talk to when the Vanity Fair pictures came out, he's like, did you see the pictures? Like, yes, I did. What do you think? That's my job. Yeah. He's like, what'd you think? I was like, I save it for the live stream. I don't give it out for free. Actually, I give it all out for free.
Yeah.
But if the trailer is actually coming out, I'm excited. I'm very excited. That's going to be a thing and be like, hey, wait, hold on, what time is it coming out? I guess I'm going to have to stay up till that hour.
Yep.
So yeah, we've got all that stuff coming on. The Dune Over is happening. We just got to find a date and time to start it with Cinia that gives us time, because a chapter a week, I know 100% I can do.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, actually 110%, because I have a lot of downtime.
I was going to say I may skip forward a little bit. Maybe I have a lot of like graphic novels. I've only gotten through about like 10 to 15 of the ones that I ordered, so I still have another like 40 to go.
I thought about getting those little tab things and cutting them up to put in the book, but then I'm like, you know what? My brand is being unprepared, so maybe I'll just put like little fold on the page and just be like, okay, I gotta go back to that.
Yeah.
Maybe hide some stuff. Just doing a whole tabs thing is just a little too much work for me. So anyway, join us on Monday, and then of course next Thursday we'll be back talking about something. I'm sure I'll have a hot take on Mercy, because of course I'm gonna. I think issue 3 might be the one that makes or breaks me still picking it up.
Yeah, and who knows? Some other shit may come out in the comic book industry or in the world in general that we're just gonna have to talk about. So. We'll see.
And if Warren Ellis posts his message, expect us to talk about it. I'm hoping nothing else horrible happens in the week, because I really don't like talking about this shit. I really don't. I like the inclusivity of it all. See, my tongue's tied. Anyway, join us. So long, farewell. Avita say goodbye.